GPT workflows are repeatable instructions that you might see over and over again in your personal life or in your business life. In my particular situation, I do automated YouTube videos where I have scripts based off information that I research on the internet. And that workflow I repeat over and over again for each video. The other place that I personally do it is when I publish this video, I'll have to come up with the title, the text that goes on the thumbnail, the design I want for the thumbnail. And then when I do release a video and I have a transcript, I'll want to get the YouTube description, the LinkedIn post, maybe a Medium article, and definitely a tweet. So in this video, I'm going to show you a proof of concept application that I'm building for building GPT workflows. If you're wondering what a GPT workflow is, it's essentially a bunch of prompts that you might run over and over again. And back at the beginning of the year, I did 7 GPTs to grow your YouTube channel in 2024. What it did was take the transcript summary that I would do in a video, and from that, produce better intros, produce better outros. Here we would have the ability to create a YouTube description based on the transcript and then to share it on Twitter or LinkedIn. Because I'm doing GPT workflows all the time, I started putting together a little application. And the idea of it is that you have a prompt over here and you have some input variables. So create 5 simple project ideas on an idea. And we might go with Genmo, which is a text to image generation system. And if we show the interpolated prompt, we can see create 5 simple project ideas on Genmo, and with that we could just copy that straight into the clipboard and use it in ChatGPT. Now from there you would get 5 different ideas, you would select an idea, and from there make a basic fact sheet. So let's gather a whole lot of information about this product, and the selected idea might be using text to image in Genmo. And so now you've got this new prompt that you can use in ChatGPT or in a future version of this application by clicking the start button. Now when working with GPT workflows, you often have different phases that you're going through. So in this example there might be a research phase followed by developing the script. We're in the research phase where you can see the bunch of steps that are going on. And where I've used this quite effectively is in a channel that I've got called AITLDR, where I'm creating different videos. And one of the videos in here called Using Genmo is already an outlier with 41 times the channel average. And the interesting thing about this channel with its 28 videos is that it's only about 2 months old. And I'm using GPT workflows to build all the scripts, and they're good quality scripts and they're good looking videos. So let's have a look at how I was doing my GPT workflows. Now I love using Mindmaps. They're a great way of organizing structure. And when I was doing a YouTube video script, I'd have this general stuff that I'd do every time. There'd be a bunch of information that I'd want to collect. We'll call it parameters here. And there'd be certain large language models I'd want to use. Usually it'd be OpenAI, but if I needed search capability, I'd use Perplexity. Now from there, I'd go off and do a little bit of research. There'd be basic metadata about the video. Let's develop some facts and information in the fact sheet. Select the type of video that'd be appropriate to the fact sheet we've built, and then expand on it, go into more detail. With that, we could get metadata. And so examples of the sorts of inputs and outputs would be, for the expanded fact sheet, an input might be a simple title plus the basic fact sheet that we got here and the video type that we're focusing on, which would have come from here. The output, being the expanded fact sheet, would then become the input for the expanded metadata, and that's where I might get a list of engaging titles, keywords and topics. With all the research phase completed, we could then move on to the script writing phase. Would be create a script, clean it up, fact check it. So one of the big problems with writing any sort of information for an article or a YouTube video is the information accurate? So there'd be a section in there. And lastly, a human would finish the job. So all the ideas that you're looking at in the mind map is what we're trying to achieve with the GPT workflow, just a bunch of steps in a bunch of phases. Another more complex workflow that I do is when I create a Medium article. And what I'm doing with this is collecting a bunch of information. I start from the transcript of one of my videos and I'm building out extra information. And the way I do that is running through a bunch of GPT steps, such as doing some research, developing outlines, getting better intros, stuff like that. And how that looks in the real world is that I've currently got 2 drafts for different articles I've got. I recently did a video on getting started with and then this article, but how I built 10 classic games in just an hour using WebSim AI and ChatGPT. And I went through and I created these different games like Pac-Man and Asteroids, and I talked about the other tool that I created. And it's interesting to look at this because that screenshot that you see has been integrated into the ChatGPT workflow software that we're talking about today. So if we quickly look at the quality of the article, we've got how to use better prompts in GPT to improve storytelling, built off a transcript, and after a month and a half, it's already got nearly 400 claps to it. And we go through it, it's got the prompts, it's got good paragraphs, intros, outros, and graphics all going on. And much of this was done using the GPT workflow that I just showed in the Mindmap. Now, when I was doing my first proof of concept for the agent workflow software, this is the workflow I started with, building a YouTube script. And we've got the research of the basic idea, the fact sheet, video type, etc. And you can see all these bits of information across the top here. But we also had what we would call phases. So we've got the research phase and the develop script. And if we go and click on the overview, we can see there's the research phase. And these are the steps that you would go through, followed by the develop script phase. And that would have a set of steps that you go through as well. Now let's move over to the workflow that I want to build today, and that's for the YouTube publishing of a video. And what I've put in place is the idea that I create a title, I need text for the thumbnail, and that shouldn't be the same as the YouTube title, and there'll be some design guidelines. After that, I'm going to take the transcript that I've got for the YouTube video and create both a summary and an abridgment, and these are 2 different ways of summarizing text. From that, we should be able to create YouTube descriptions, LinkedIn posts, send off tweets, and then move on to the Medium articles. So we have our workflow name and we have a list of steps here, and how that could look in the application is that the workflow name should go here and the steps should be listed in this sort of area. But there's also this other concept going on called the phases, and we can see the phases listed here. So it might be useful to go and change. So I've come over to my mind map and I've just added a section called phases, and I can see 3 different phases. The first one would be getting the thumbnail correct. The next area would be about getting the summary and the abridgment. We call that research. And that occurs to me that there are 2 other areas that would be interesting. So usually the chapter timestamps need to be worked out, and they're useful for the YouTube description coming up. The other information that's useful is just my brand information. So it's one thing to talk about a video in a YouTube description, but if there's nothing in there to talk about the brand that's creating it, that's a little bit of a challenge, and that information needs to be fed into future workflows, which we'll call, say, the social media content. So what I've done is taken the phases and we'll just expand it out. We've got thumbnail design, and we will just move these 3 items down and attach it right there. With that, we've got all the information around the fact sheet, which is the abridgment, the chapters and the brand information, and lastly the post-production where we're building social media content. So I think the name of the workflow going here will come from here, followed by 3 different phases. We've got the thumbnail design, the fact sheet, and the social content. And after that, there'll be 3 steps within this phase, 4 within this phase, and 4 within this. Now let's talk about how I'm quickly designing these GPT workflows. Now you've seen here that I've created a simple mind map, and a mind map is a wonderful way of explaining structure, but where it misses the point is that there's a lot of extra information that you want in, say, a GPT workflow. In this case, we've got some input variables and it should be simple to use, and maybe a basic fact sheet. In this case here, I want to create a DSL that produces GPT agent workflows in minutes. Now that's where I'm going to introduce the concept of a DSL. What is it? It stands for a domain-specific language, and it's really a way of writing just like we might write with a prompt, where you've got both the information that you want, maybe a list of slides for a PowerPoint presentation, but also the semantic meaning, the fact that there are slides and that a slide might have an image on the left or the right and 3 bullet points. So a domain-specific language is this beautiful text structure. It can be written like a prompt, but it has both the semantic meaning and the informational meaning. So examples of them in the real world are things like SQL, LaTeX, and regex. So let's have a look at how a DSL could work. So I've created this little image here called GPT Agent Workflows, and it's a bit of a storyboard that we could say was done in PowerPoint of understanding the workflows, key considerations, etc. And the way I created this was with a DSL. So I said here's an example DSL for creating a PowerPoint presentation about the topic we're dealing with in 3 slides, and it said presentation. So this is very easy to understand when you're putting it into GPT. We've got semantic meaning, the concept that there's a presentation, that there's slides, that this slide has a title and some bullet points, and we just keep repeating the information. And this was the user interface that I initially decided I wanted to create my GPT workflows, as you see right here. And the reason for that is twofold. From a point of view, it's way quicker for me to develop this little DSL language and make it very flexible. But because it is all text, I can generate GPT workflows really quickly just using ChatGPT. So over on the left, I've got the DSL that I've created for the YouTube script writer. And remember that a DSL is a domain-specific language, and it's about solving problems in terminology that's easy to understand and read. And what we've got here is the idea of an agent that we're creating, and the agent would be a large language model sort of automation, and we're just naming it YouTube scriptwriter. We've given it a little bit of a description. Now, some of the things that I'm trying to solve is I want concepts like settings that are configurable for each workflow that I do, a list of prompts, and I don't want to write it into the language here because it's just too hard to read when they get big. So in this case, I'm just reading them from files. Then there's a list of attributes or variables that I want to collect along the way. And then there's just the sections or the phases, so the research phase with a bunch of steps going on, and that those steps can take some information and they can produce some information. And after a while, you'll go on to another phase. From that, the information is written out to a file. And all of this happens when we hit save. So let's have a look at that. Now, as I'm writing my DSL and I'm hitting save, what it does is it takes the file here on the right and it updates it automatically. So if I come up to the description and I'll just put in Appy Dave and I'll hit save, and what's happening on the right is that that file is changing automatically. And every section of this workflow is actually represented on the right. So if we look at the sections, we've got a research phase, and we could come into here and change this to research and development, and we might go into here and change this to something like Claude. And when we hit save, this value should automatically change. Plus now the default language model is Claude. So with that little change in place, the user interface has updated. We're seeing research and development here on the main screen and also on the mobile version of it. And let's have a quick look at how this is set up. So for the proof of concept or first version of this application, there's the DSL here. It reads in the prompts from little files. So we've got examples of different prompts just sitting in the file. And when you press save, it just writes out this little JSON document that represents one workflow. That's then automatically picked up by a simple Astro application that's rendering everything that we see on screen using Tailwind CSS. So the first thing I want to do is show how easy it is to take a simple mind map structure like we've got YouTube published video and convert it into an agent workflow. So what I'll do to start off with is I'll go get an email template DSL I've written, a programming DSL for Rails, and one that I've done for my script writing workflow. And I've copied all three of these, started myself a new GPT workflow, and I've just copied all the information in, and I'm using a command called read that I've set up as a custom instruction so that it just absorbs the information and asks what to do next. I then just go to my mind map and copy the information, and I've started a prompt that says, can you create a new DSL using this structure? And I paste everything in. So it's in the middle of generating. It's got an area for attributes. Now this may be a little bit more complex than I need at the moment, and I will edit it, but let's just see what this looks like when we finish it. So to get this working, what I can do is just copy the code that's produced here and we can paste it in, and it seems like it's put everything in place. I have a little bit of a concern around this loading of the files because these files don't currently exist. So what I'll do is I'll go and create a sample prompt. We'll call it create prompts for publishing your YouTube video. And I've just manually updated it so that that's commented out and we're only going to see the same prompt. And now when I hit save on it, we get this new GPT workflow. I'll just click on the thumbnail design. So we got 3 items here and they match the information that we've got in our DSL. We'll click on the fact sheet. We've got 4 there, and we'll go to the social content where we've also got 4. Another thing to look at is we should have attributes, prompts, and they're all going to say the same information because we're reading it from the same file each time, and some settings. So we'll just have a look at 2 of the attributes that are here. One's called summary and abridgment, and they're basically the outcome from the transcript in 2 different formats. And if we move into the social content section and we'll look at the tweet, they're inputs. So we got the summary and the abridgment. Now generally I wouldn't have both of them, I'd only have one, so we will change that in a moment. But let's have a look at it here. So we are currently on the attributes where we can see summary and abridgment are 2 values that we're collecting. And if we go to the social content, currently on the tweet, and we can see input of summary and abridgment. So let's go change that. Now I find that abridgments are really good for YouTube descriptions. They've got a whole lot more detail than a summary, so I would remove the summary from anything that's complex writing. But something like a tweet, which is simple, I would just call it like that. So I'm just going to hit save. And because Astro refreshes automatically when files change, it's just made it summary. Now, if you were paying attention, you might have noticed that when I went from social to fact sheet to thumbnail, we were always on 0.3. And that's because this is a proof of concept project, not a fully working minimum viable product. Now, I do have a minimum viable product and it's here. And if we look at the same information from this point of view, we can go into individual areas, click on them, and see what's going on. We go back to the overview. We might go to the transcript abridgment as part of the fact sheet, and now we can see that. Now that's all part of the next video, not this one. The first idea for me was the ability to get the DSL generating the look and feel for all my designs and being able to create GPT workflows really quickly. But I'll just show you this quickly while we're at it. So let's say we put in a variable, and we'll call it transcript because that's what we've called it over on the left, and we show the interpolated prompt right here. If we say hello, it should just go straight in, and if we wanted to see hello multiple times, we could just paste this in multiple times and we'll see it. The other thing that's going on here is that there's the ability to select different large language models, because the way I envisage the software working is I should be able to pick the large language model that makes sense for the task I'm on. Another area that's going on is the output attributes. We didn't go into them in the DSL, but they do actually work from the point of view that when output comes out of this system, maybe it can be split up into multiple variables to be stored for future use. You should just be able to go from step to step, and once you're at the end of a workflow, there's a little down arrow saying that we're moving on to the next section, which is the social content, and we just can move all the way through until we get to the end. And one last part is this copy button. So what we can do is change the variables here. We'll call this my summary, and we'll go abridgment in action, and we'll just say happy day for the brand information. Now when we hit copy, that's now in the clipboard, and we could just paste that directly into ChatGPT. I'm going to paste it here, and so suddenly we get this really long one, so when we press copy again, we've got a lot more information coming. Now when I first started this project, I did it all using ChatGPT from my phone. One afternoon I'd done some mind maps around how I wanted GPT workflows to work for my business, my YouTube channel, and I decided, can I convert this into a database diagram or an entity relationship diagram? And I basically did it on the phone while riding the motorbike. I was riding the motorbike to a user group, and I'd pull off to the side of the road and just make another statement that I'd been thinking of to the phone, press go and let it start generating information, and then I'd ride on another half a kilometer. And as I was going, I built up a data flow diagram, an entity relationship diagram. I started having a conversation with it around how the domain specific language should work. All that evening I spent in cafes and also at this group, and whenever I had spare time, just having a quick conversation. Now I've misplaced that conversation, but I'll show you basic ideas. So what I've done here is, what is a simple ERD or DFD in ASCII for the following structure, and I've just pasted in the structure we've just been working with. And what it then does is start writing entity relationship diagrams around what the agent is, prompts, attributes, sections, etc. And you can also get a data flow diagram. And so it was this simple conversation backwards and forwards for many hours, but I was able to work out the way my domain specific language should work. So this was one of the early draft DSLs. It's using a YAML sort of format. From that it wrote an AST, an abstract syntax tree, which would allow programming to read that structure we just looked at. I think this is in Python, which is not what I needed because I was working with Ruby, so I continued the conversation. And here I got a cleaner, more human looking DSL to work with. And what I like about a structure like this is that if I was to make this application work fully in the cloud from a little text box, this is something people can work with. In fact, let's have a look at this product called DB Diagram, which I think is a great example of how DSLs can effectively create visualizations. This allows you to write simple little structures, so I'm just going to put in hello, and the hello is now connected up visually, and I was able to use this tool to create the entity relationship diagram as an actual database structure. So I spent a whole lot of time then getting it to create code for me. So this is the actual code for how the reading of the data from that domain specific language happens, and concepts like writing it out to JSON and YAML were all written as code as we went through this, and you can see all the Ruby code here. From there I was able to create the Astro application, and all the code got written again in ChatGPT. The only time I'd use handcrafting to fix things was when ChatGPT just was going into circles. It does that from time to time, but a lot of the errors I was able to just diagnose directly in this particular chat window. Now, if you want me to go into more detail of how I'm using ChatGPT for coding, and definitely in the future how I'll be using the GPT agent workflow to write coding, and this has been quite effective, then I'm going to be dealing with that in the next video, where I've built the minimum viable product, and we can see some of the svelte code being created right here. I'm Happy Dave, and that has been a proof of concept around GPT agent workflows. Now, if you want to see this turned into a real product, then check out the link in the description. If, on the other hand, you want to know more about either the coding, the GPT way of building code, or just the GPT workflows, then drop a comment down below. And in the next video, what we'll do is we'll work on the minimum viable product. So please like and subscribe, and see you soon.